Well, what is the place that?
Wait, so
we're gonna
actually,
talk about today?
I was thinking actually till a few minutes ago, Washington Square Park, but actually I think actually Greenwich Village.
The village is the center of music, literary, political, social movements.
My dad's been going to Greenwich Village since he was a kid.
So it was a third floor walk up, and you always had to, you buzz in. It was a typical New York apartment, and
It's gone through a lot of change since then.
like these were tenement buildings. Now it's a very hip place, right? If you wanted to like live on the third floor,
It would cost $2,750 a month without utilities.
she would go to Crustidi sometimes and get the cheese, but like for the holidays, there was always a thing in our house. It was like, no, get the good cheese.
But the Guidis didn't need much.
Kitchen was like a 10 by 12 room, but now filled out with a sink, a stove, a refrigerator, and then the table.
I'd always heard my dad talk about his history with the village in sort of this distant way, but I never really understood the intricacies as to why. So I sat down with him to figure that out.
It seems to be like it's recording.
We would go in 1 or 2 times a month, usually 2 times, because we would alternate
Between seeing his mom's side of the family
up at 88 Simeon Avenue up in Inwood,
and Greenwich Village, where his dad's side of the family was.
which we've been to so many times together. But
I have such a different perspective in my head than what he has in his, and I assume this is due to the stories and memories he once shared with his family there. Like, for example, the time the Italian mafia fed my grandpa sausage.
his step-grandfather, he never quite had a job. He provided for them, but nobody really quite knew what he did. They didn't really talk about it, but what we basically figured out, he was essentially just running numbers. He had a route, much like somebody might have a paper route apparently, and he'd go around in his area, take the bets. It was a gambling operation, and so then, when he finished his route, then he would take my father down there, and they would just, he was one of the few kids around there, they would just load him up. He was maybe 5, 6 years old, and they'd all give him something. He was like as if you had like a little dog running around and everybody's throwing him like a piece of meat, and he just literally started gaining so much, like visibly gaining so much weight.
But unfortunately, for a place to have meaning to a person, the history attached to it doesn't always have to be positive. My dad's godfather, Uncle Natal, was a gay man who lived in New York from around the 40s to the 70s, when he then returned to Italy. Even a place thought to be progressive and diverse, such as New York, did not have a culture accepting of non-heterosexual people.
One of my very favorite people in the whole world, my godfather, when I say my uncle, he was actually my great uncle. He's my, Uncle Natal had gotten. I remember asking my father, how did you even find out? You never told me after all these years. How did you find out that I was gay? And he goes, oh, well, he got arrested. He got rounded up in a raid because the cops used to go into the gay bars or some of the gay hangouts, and they would just arrest these guys like all at once because it was illegal to be gay. And it's still there. I'm pretty sure it's still called Ties. But there's a gay bar like 4 houses, 4 buildings down from where it's on the fire escape. And I remember sitting there and like I had been, for as long as I could remember, I'd go there. That was one of our favorite places to go. So she was a little hot out. They didn't have air conditioning for.
Yeah.
And she'd sit on the fire escape looking down at Christopher Street, and my father comes over and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just watching. And I'm like, how come look at those guys there? That's weird. Those guys are like kissing, right? And just these 2 guys were making out in front of Ties. And my father like paused for a second, and then he goes, yeah, they must just be really good friends. Like, he's like, come on inside, right? And so I don't know what was going through his head or what, but like,
Yeah.
I feel like he was probably, whatever his gut would have made him say, then he kind of realized that could be my uncle.
My dad didn't talk much about himself, actually, but rather the relationships that he developed and nurtured there, and the memories he shared with others, which I guess is kind of what it's all about.
All right. Well, that's the village.
Do you have what you need?